Okay. The next question is from Michelle. And she says, I'm interested in providing philosophical coaching, particularly for healthcare providers. How can I best connect with that target audience and assess their needs? From what I've read, it tends to be difficult to market to them. They typically use iPhones and they tend to be a tight-knit social group. I have good relationships with my specialists and one expressed interest, but there are professional boundaries that make connecting with my own doctors complicated. I'm a former philosophy professor and my therapist thinks this would be a promising career path for me, but it's not a well-defined niche that people are searching for, even if it's a need. I like to approach philosophical, ethical, and existential issues with a combination of critical reasoning and empathy.
So philosophical coaching for physicians, was it?
Hey, healthcare providers.
For healthcare providers, okay. Interesting. Yeah, and he's right. Nobody's looking for that. There's no healthcare providers. She, sorry.
Michelle, yeah.
Yeah, there's no healthcare provider out there that's Googling philosophical coaching for healthcare providers. So people aren't looking for it. That's true. So here's what I would do is I would imagine being a healthcare provider does lift up some of the big questions around death, what happens after, questions around what's the meaning of life, because you just see the fragility of it all the time. What does it mean to be a good person? Question around ethics. I mean, God, medicine is just nothing but rife with ethical questions all the time. Suffering, pain. I mean, so yeah, all the big human questions are there. So I think if you say, hey, philosophical coaching, not going to land. But if it was, hey, are you a healthcare provider and your work is lifting up these big questions and you just need a space to talk about it? The first thing I might do is I might create a Facebook group on this or some sort of I think that's probably the easiest one, but a space where healthcare practitioners can talk about this stuff. Where they can get together and talk about all the big quandaries, that they find themselves staying up late at night thinking about based on their work, based on the experiences that they're having. And so that's one. I think there's legs on this. There are people who think they're the only one thinking these questions, who are so hounded and haunted by what they're experiencing. And then the next question is to ask yourself, what's the breaking point? Because I mean, to have a sort of wondering like, man, I had a patient die today and it just had me think about the big questions. Okay, it's sort of spiritually, emotionally, intellectually captivating, but will they pay for it is a question. They'll pay something probably. I mean, this is also, I read a book called Open Space Technology by Owen Harrison. Just that sometimes we think, I need to have answers for people. I need to have a solution for people to pay me. And that's not always true. Sometimes actually we're misunderstanding the problem. Sometimes the problem is they feel alone in it. They just want people to talk to. And if you can be the one to host a space where they can get together and talk about it, they'll pay you for that. So you may have that kind of a situation here. But also it's a thing about what is the breaking point? What's the point at which these questions really now have to be dealt with? When did they go from yeah, that's something I think about, or I should think about that more, to I really have to wrestle this one because now this is interfering with my life? What are those breaking points for healthcare providers? If they don't get support in wrestling with these questions, so what? What happens? What's the worst case scenario there? Is there a worst case scenario, or is it that they're just vaguely haunted their whole life by these questions and not knowing? They feel a little unclear and it's uncomfortable, but it's, so what? I would be very curious about that. I know, for example, with nurses, at least in Alberta, where I come from, when they retire, there's an immense suicide rate. there's so much burnout, there's so much. So I think part of that is just sheer depletion. Part of it is their whole life purpose has been helping others, and now suddenly they're not, and just don't feel useful anymore. But perhaps it's other things, there's just bigger questions that get brought up. But so you see what I'm saying, then that could be a niche. Hey, are you a doctor approaching retirement, and you're trying to figure out what's next in your life, and how do you take the immensities that you faced and bring this into the next chapter of your life? And that could be something, or do you see, you're about to retire and you see what happens to doctors and nurses when they retire, and the depression and the cancer rates and all of this, and you just don't want to go that way, or I don't know. So I think there's, as you can hear, I'm riffing a lot, so there's probably legs to this. But you can also hopefully hear the difference between what I've been riffing on and philosophical coaching for healthcare providers. I just doesn't grab me. So that's what I have to say about that. Thank you for your question.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Let us know keep us posted what you decide to do.